Only 11 more shopping days till Christmas. How many of you have not even begun? Wow. How many of you are completely stressing out now that I just said, only 11 more days? Right? The Christmas season for many of us can be one of the craziest, busiest, most stressful times of the year, and that's ironic because the event that we're actually supposed to be celebrating during this crazy, stressful season is the event that was first heralded by angels with the words, peace on earth. Right? Peace on earth. It's more like, behold, we bring you awful tidings of great stress on earth. So either the angels didn't get the memo, or somehow this holiday season of peace on earth got all messed up, and I'm thinking it's the latter. And so in order to help us all kind of realign our Christmas traditions of getting all stressed out and frenetic activity, and to realign that with, God's holiday agenda, with God's holiday invitation to a place of peace, what we're going to do this morning and next Sunday morning and at our Christmas Eve service, which is on Christmas Eve, by the way, the 24th, we're going to be looking at what we can learn about wise worship from the familiar Christmas story of the three wise men. And so this morning, specifically what we're going to see is what we can learn from the wise men about how to find Jesus in the midst of all the chaos and distraction and stress of Christmas. And so what we're going to do to begin with is we're going to watch the familiar story of the three wise men from Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, and we're going to watch it as portrayed in the motion picture, Matthew, which, exactly like the John video series that we've been watching as part of our ongoing journey through the Gospel of John, the Matthew video also portrays the life of Jesus in an exact word-for-word script taken from the Gospel of Matthew. So before we roll the clip, it will help you to understand this, that the movie actually scripts or stages Matthew, the apostle, Matthew, the author of the gospel that bears his name. The movie actually scripts him as a character in the movie, and he's narrating the action. And so the movie will cut from the scene of the three wise men to some guy like weaving a chicken coop, or I don't know what it is. He's weaving something. That's Matthew. And what you'll see is he's just sort of reminiscing about his life experiences with Jesus to some scribes who are copying down what Matthew knew from firsthand experience. So with that in mind, are we ready? We are going to roll the clip.
After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked,
"Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him."
When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born.
"In Bethlehem, in Judea,"
they replied. "For this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will be shepherd of my people, Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said,
Go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him.
After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route.
So we can actually learn something about finding Jesus in the midst of the chaoses and stresses of the Christmas holiday season from these three wise men, because there actually is a very real sense in which these wise men would have experienced kind of crazy stress even at that very first Christmas. So I'm going to make some points of connection with their stressful holiday. First of all, the wise men would have been stressed by the world events. The wise men who were the scientists and the physicists and the astronomers and the philosophers of their time, they would have been more than a little frazzled by the appearance of an unusual star in the sky that had never been there before, right? Yes, they paid very close attention to stuff like that. It would have caught their attention and probably stressed them out a bit. And then let's face it, even today, in our modern day, our holidays, our own holidays would be a little bit more stressful if we went outside and there was this big gigantic star burning in the sky that had never been there before, right? Is anybody else seeing that? That ain't right. That's never been there before, has it, right? That'd kind of freak us out. So we got the stress of world events. The wise men would have probably had to put in a lot of extra stressful overtime holiday hours, researching and reading about what that star might mean. They were scientists, they were physicists, they were philosophers. They wanted to know, what is this all about? And we don't know how much work they would have put in to try to figure it out, but we do know that they somehow eventually landed upon the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament, the book, because they ended up in Jerusalem. They ended up somehow in the right place that the star was pointing towards, looking for the newborn King of the Jew. And we actually looked at this a couple of Christmases ago, that this connection between the star and a newborn King of the Jews, they discovered a couple hundred pages into the book. They had to do a lot of homework. And this is what they would have found in the book of Numbers in the Hebrew Scriptures. Do we have that passage here? It reads, if you can't see it, this is the message of Balaam, son of Beor, a man who was given the ability to prophetically kind of foretell events that would be coming. God gave him the ability to foresee what was going on. So, and this is the message of this man whose eyes see clearly, the message of one who hears the words of God, who has knowledge from the Most High, who sees a vision from the Almighty, and who bows down with eyes wide open. In other words, this is a message from somebody who's, God's showing him some stuff, all right? And this is what he sees. He says, I see him, but not here and now, and I perceive him, but far in the distant future. And a star will rise from Jacob, Jacob being another name for the country of Israel, and a scepter will emerge from Israel. And so right there in the Hebrew Scriptures, the wise men discovered this prophetic foresight about an eastern star, a star to the east, that would lead to a divine scepter, a star that would point to a king. But that connection then for the wise men would not have happened without them doing, some overtime, little extra holiday studies, little extra homework, and I suspect it might have been a little bit stressful for them that first Christmas. And then the wise men would have also experienced the stress of difficult holiday travels that very first Christmas. We're told that the wise men traveled from the eastern lands. They traveled from the eastern lands, and if you look at a map, that basically everything east of Jerusalem for about 800 miles looks like this. They traveled from the east. Right? And if you look at like Google Maps, you would see that you have to go like 800 miles before you would find anything that shows up green in cities where people actually live, or at least should want to live. All right, so how many of you think that your holiday travel plans are a pain? It's like, I've got to go all the way to Pearston for our family dinner, right? You're a little over the river and through the woods. It's got nothing on the three wise men, all right? It was a little stressful journey. No horse knows the way to carry the sleigh, right through that. As a last point of connection, with our life today, the wise men would have experienced the stress of a tense, stressful holiday social gathering, right? As we just saw in the movie, King Herod's interest, his so-called interest in worshiping the newborn king of the Jew, King Herod was the current king of the Jews, right? So his interest in worshiping this newborn king of the Jews was not a sincere interest. And I doubt that fact was lost on the three wise men when they were invited to this kind of private social gathering with King Herod. Yes, tell me more about the newborn king of the Jews. I want to worship him. Right? So it's not hard to imagine that Herod's, kind of homicidal paranoia, because we know the result of this, right? We know the rest of the story. He slaughtered all the newborn children of Israel out of his homicidal paranoia. So that would have been an awkward Christmas dinner, right? You thought yours were awkward. I think that would have been really awkward for the wise men. So this is the point. The wise men had more than their fair share of holiday tension to fight their way through on that very first Christmas before they found themselves in the place, as we read in Matthew 2, verses 10 and 11, where they were in a place of peace and they were bowed down before Jesus and filled with joy. They somehow pushed through the holiday stress into a place of peace, bowed down before Jesus, filled with joy. And so how can we get there? How can we get there? What is it that we can learn from these wise men about finding Jesus amidst the stresses of Christmas? And moreover, what is it that we can learn about pushing through, the stresses and the chaoses of life, even beyond the holidays, so that we can find ourselves living the whole of our lives at a place of peace, bowed down before Jesus and filled with his joy? And what we would actually see is that there are several choices that the wise men had to make, choices that we too need to make in order to find that place of peace before Jesus. This morning we're just going to look at one of those choices, and we're going to tease this out a little bit more in the next few services to come. So here's the choice. It's a simple one-point sermon this morning, and it's this: God is big and I am not. Let's say that together. God is big and I am not. Right? So this is fundamentally the choice that I want you to bring in focus this morning. It's a choice of openness to and receptivity to and responsiveness to just the supernaturally big and powerful hand of God in invading time and space. If you want to find yourself moving to a place of peace, a place where you're bowed down at the feet of Jesus, filled with joy, you need just to make this choice that God is big and he still invades time and space in doing stuff that sort of bakes our brains. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, so how do we learn this from the wise men? Well, as we talked about just a moment ago, the star that led the wise men to Jesus, it was not an ordinary, daily, scientifically, explicable planetary event. It was extraordinary, inexplicably so. It was not natural. It was supernatural. And it pointed to the fact that God had invaded time and space. God had stepped into and actively intervened in human history. And so one of the very first choices that the wise men had to make in order to get to that place of peace, get to that place filled with joy, bowed down before Jesus, it was this choice to embrace the fact that there was something bigger than them that was at work in the universe, presently and actively. And it's the same for us. In order for us to get to that place of peace, filled with joy, bowed down before Jesus, we need to embrace the fact that there's something bigger than us that is still at work in the universe, actively and presently. We need to determine to believe and choose, embrace the fact that God still invades time and space in inexplicably extraordinary ways. Supernatural ways that don't fit inside our nice, tidy, little boxes of what we believe God can't do. No, he doesn't do that. Right? We need to embrace the fact that God is big and I am not. So let me approach this from a little bit different direction. We may not find ourselves living at a place of peace in life, and we may find ourselves not living at a place of joy in life because what we actually bowed down before, the God that we bowed down our lives is very tiny and very powerless. And the gods that we often bow down to never do anything but play by our rules. But the true God of peace, the true God of joy is way bigger than the nice, tidy, little boxes that we try to keep him in. And he's uncontrollably powerful. He does things like make big, gigantic stars appear in the sky that weren't there before and that shouldn't be there, and then, shows up where you might least expect him to show up. God is big. And so it might be that we would be more likely to encounter this big God, to find him, to experience him, to find his peace, to find his joy amidst the chaos and the stress of life. If we looked for him, as the wise men did, based on this description that he's big. If we actually looked for him based on this description that he is big, it might be more likely that we would find him. Right? So how does that work? That's an honest question. How does it make a difference? Isn't God big, whether I'm defining him as big or not? Well, yes, of course he's big. But think about this. In the same way that if you went you went on a jungle safari, and your objective was to look for elephants. Right? You are looking for elephants, but you spent the whole time on your hands and knees, scraping through the dirt with a magnifying glass, looking for elephants. Elephants. Right? You spent your whole time looking for elephants crawling around on your hands and knees. It might be quite possible that you would spend your entire safari crawling around actually at the feet of a real-for-real live elephant, right? And you would never know it. You would never see it because you were looking in the wrong place, using the wrong definition of elephant with the wrong expectation of elephant. With the result that you completely missed something that was big and powerful, and it was towering right over you the whole time. You see how that works, right? And so that person, that safari explorer could conceivably come to the conclusion after spending an entire lifetime even crawling around on his or her hands and knees at the feet of elephants, they could conceivably come to the conclusion that elephants don't exist. I've spent an entire lifetime looking for them and I have never ever seen one. Right? That's not That's not inconceivable. Boy, it's hard to say that word without going to Princess Bride for all of you movie fans. Inconceivable. All right. Well, back to whatever we were talking about. So this is the point. I mean, you can see that in a very real way that our definitions, such as elephants are tiny microscopic things that crawl around the dirt, really do determine for us what we are able to see. Do you see that? Our expectations really do define for us what is possible and what we can actually see and what we can actually experience. And so it could be that many of us aren't finding God. We're not experiencing God. It might be that some of us don't even believe that God actually exists anywhere out there. It might be that we're not finding His peace. It might be that we're not finding His joy, not because He doesn't exist, but because we've been crawling around in the dirt on our hands and knees, looking through a magnifying glass with the wrong expectation and the wrong definition of who God actually is and what God actually does. And all the while that we're missing Him, He's towering over us. Our expectations, our definitions really do define for us what we can see, what we believe is possible, and what we will actually experience. All right, does that make sense? All right. Well, why do we do that? Well, I think the truth is that for many of us, we're honestly uncomfortable with a God who's big, and a God who is powerful, and a God who is uncontrollable by us. Many of us are uncomfortable with a God who, is not far away, We're uncomfortable with a God that actually still shows up and does stuff. And we believe, because we're uncomfortable with Him, we believe that real peace in life, real happiness, fun, and joy, and peace, I guess I already said that, in life is found then not in bowing our lives down before this big, scary, powerful, uncontrollable God, but we believe that real joy and happiness and fun and peace in life is found in living as if God bows down to us. That we are in control. We think that happiness and joy in life is found in the formula that God is tiny and I am big. I am big. God is not. We think that peace peace in our lives is invoked by the prayer, my kingdom come. Right? We sang this just a little bit ago, right? On earth, let it be done on earth as it is in heaven. We think that peace in life is found by invoking the prayer, no, my will be done. Not your will, but my will be done on earth and in heaven. My will be done, right? So big me, little God. Big me, little God. We believe is the key to finding ourselves in a place of peace in life, in a place of joy in life. But the wisdom that we learned from the wise men this morning, the wisdom that we learn about life, not just for the holidays, but about doing the whole of our lives, is a choice that runs completely counter to the grain of our nature. And that is a choice. God is big. I am not. God is big. I am not. And really what I do, just to conclude this morning, is just tell you a story. Some of you have heard me share this story of the very first Vineyard conference that I ever went to. This was back in 1987, so it was 2 or 3 years ago. And I frankly was very skeptical. I was very skeptical about this group of people who actually believed that God showed up and actually did stuff today. The Vineyard people kind of freaked me out, to be perfectly honest. But to make a very long story short, after the course of a weekend conference, They did ministry time, just like we do response time at the end of our service, where people will stand up and they will share what they, feel are words, specific, now, present. God is actively speaking words to, we think, people in this room. How we do that here, and it freaks some of you out, all right? So they were freaking me out. But something somebody said was like, oh, I think that's me. It is me, So I responded. I responded to the word, and I allowed these scary people to pray for me. And so a handful of ministry team people gathered around, and they were praying for me. And I noticed, I'm standing there, I'm trying to enter into this. But I noticed after a while, I don't know how long exactly, but their prayers just kind of faded out, and it was getting quiet. But the longer I stood there, what I was noticing is there was somebody standing behind me, and they had their hand on the back of my head, and they were pushing me. And it was annoying. It was really annoying me because it felt, it felt manipulative. And so after, kind of, doing those, like, quit pushing me, I finally shot this nasty glance backwards to let them know you can stop doing that now. And, right, you know the punchline, don't you? There was nobody back there. There was nobody back there. And I think my exact response was, oh God. Right? And over the course of the next 15 to perhaps 45 minutes, it was a very long time, I don't know exactly how long, this invisible hand on the back of my head just proceeded to, and this took place like slow motion, just to push me from a standing upright position to nose down in the carpet. Just this long, slow-mo squash. And the whole time that this thing was going on, there were just several conversations that I was having with myself and conversations that I was having with the Lord. And what I was keenly aware of during this long, slow-mo squash was that, the hand of God had actually invaded time and space and was on the back of my head. Right? That was something to think about. And that hand, it was just so clear to me, was uncontrollably and irresistibly powerful. And I was just keenly aware that at any point in time, God could have just simply be like, and there'd be nothing I could do. It was just like, squash you like a bug. And it was frightening. It was absolutely terrifying. And yet, at the same time that the slow-mo squash is going on, I heard the Lord just keep saying to me, Kent, if you want me to stop, just step out from beneath my hand. If you want me to stop, just step out. And I knew I could just walk away, and that would be it. I knew I could walk away from the hand of God. And I'll never, ever forget making the decision. And this, for me, church, it's one of the most sacred life experiences in my journey with Jesus. It's just a sacred, it's hard to talk about it. I remember making a decision in the moment that I would rather live my life beneath the uncontrollably, irresistibly, scary, powerful hand of God that could crush me like a bug at any moment than I would want to live my life not knowing his hand, not knowing his loving, gentle hand on my life. And so I stayed in this long, slow-mo squash. And I can tell you that there has been no greater place of peace in my life, no greater place of joy in my life than when I was bowed down, nose to the carpet, underneath the scary, irresistibly, uncontrollably powerful, loving, gentle hand of God. No greater place of joy, no greater place of peace. That's what we learned from the wise men this morning. God is big. God is big. He's bigger than the boxes we try to keep him in. And the place of real joy in life, the place of real peace in life is bowed down before him. Because he's big and I'm not. Let's say that. God is big and I'm not.